Good morning, everyone. Brett Simon here. I hope you're all having a great weekend so far. It's early morning California time, so I'm yet to start my weekend, really. But anyway, I thought I'd start it off by taking some of your questions, giving you some answers on DV Lottery to get your green card. Let's make sure you don't make any mistakes in this process. That really is very important. Happy to take any questions you like. I've got a couple of questions that have been asked that I thought were kind of interesting questions. One was about the UK lawsuit, and it strikes me that perhaps I hadn't sort of totally explained what the strategy should be. So let me just cover the UK lawsuit and what's happened, the outcome of that. Essentially, the UK lawsuit has not completed yet, but it is finished in one sense. It is achieved its goals, right? The lawsuit will continue for the time being. We've got the government owe us a response, and we're going to get a response from them on some questions that we've asked. And one of the things that I hope that we were going to get, or that I hope we will still get, is proof or evidence that they've done the right thing when they've announced the results for the UK winners and added UK winners in DV 2025 and DV 2026. We know they didn't do it right. We know how they didn't do it right. We know that our lawsuit forced them to do it right. So in one sense, we've achieved everything that we said that we wanted to achieve, because we now have got winners. We had winners in DV25. There were a number of people processed, and we've now got 1,303 winners or selectees in DV 2026. However, I would like to know, for personal satisfaction, I guess, and because I've spent thousands of dollars suing these buggers, I think I'm entitled to know, particularly as everything I said in the lawsuit was correct. But for that personal satisfaction, I would like to know that they handled the two lottery periods appropriately within the parameters that they're supposed to do, which means that if there were, whatever the percentage of winning chances were in Europe, the UK should have had that same percentage winning chance, right? Now, I know, because I'm smarter than the government, I know they've screwed it up again. They've actually given the UK winners too high a percentage chance in the lawsuit. In the draw. Because they were, I guess, prompted by the lawsuit, they were somehow scared. I don't know. But they allowed the draw process to get away from them, so that people have been selected with impossibly high numbers, right? And so that's, that needs some explanation. How did that come to happen? Why did that happen? Now, I actually believe the numbers make total sense to me. I actually believe that they did the draw part correct in the original draw. I don't think they made any mistakes in that original draw. Their mistakes were that they hid the UK entries. They allowed the Cuban entries to continue and be selected. That was another mistake. But then when they did the fix for DV 2026, they've allowed the winners to continue to be selected up to about case number 200,000, which is just ridiculous. The rest of Europe runs out of numbers at about 48,000. And so they've just sort of gone further and further and further. Now, if that was the case and the distribution were correct, then that would mean that they would have about 4 to 5%, or 4 to 5 times more chance of selection for the UK winners than for any other country in Europe. However, that's spread over an impossibly long range, an impossibly large range, right? And so the problem is not that the winners were given too high a chance in the randomized process. That part was done correctly. The problem is that they've allowed the numbers to go too far for some of the selectees. And I think people over the normal EU range are probably not going to have any chance. But that does remain to be seen. There is one sort of weird scenario where if the region were to go current, then that would include those crazy, ridiculous high numbers in the UK as well. And so, you know, perhaps we haven't seen the end of the fun and games in DV 2026. But anyway, I'd like to sort of check that they handled that, you know, the way I think they handled it. I also want to check that they handled DV 2025 correctly. They put out 43 cases who they said were winners. All of those winners were under case number 23,000. In other words, they didn't announce any winners above the current number of 23,000. That was kind of a kind thing to do. But imagine going from that, you know, from that kind position where they clearly had control enough to say, hey, there are winners, and we've only emailed people up to case number 23,000. They had that control based on the last number in the visa bulletin. They knew that that was the last number that would that went current, and they were able to apply the artificial limit of 23,000 in DV25, and then in DV26 they you know, a few weeks later, literally just a few weeks later, they lost their minds and just allowed the numbers to go crazy. Like, I don't know what they're doing there. Honestly, I would love to be a fly on the wall with some of the stuff that they do. It just seems like, how dopey are you people? How badly, like, you know, run are your thought processes and your procedures? And like, did nobody get the back of an envelope and write down, oh, here's what we should do? Like, did nobody think to make a plan and test this and say, oh, we got EU winners here in the UK mob at 180,000. That seems odd. Did nobody think that? Like, what a bunch of muppets, really. You know, it's beyond me. It's beyond me how. And people have been asking me this week, you know, is it really possible they're that badly run? Yes, it is. It's absolutely that possible. I'm telling you, it's amazing. Anyway. There you go. So that's the UK lawsuit. What was the other question I got? I got a good question this morning. I wanted to answer that question on the live. What was that one? I'm going to my Brit Simon Says blog page. Oh yeah, this is about the DV 2027 entry period. The question is, if the DV lottery entry period starts in December instead of October, and December is just a plucked from the air. We don't know when it's going to start, right? But if it starts in December instead of October, would the results still be released in May, or would they come out later, for example, in June or July? That's a good question. And I think the answer is yes, there would be a delay in the results period as well, because we've actually seen something like this before. We've seen a small delay before. There was a lottery period, I think it was DV 2017, where they messed up the first few days of the lottery somehow. They had a technical problem. And because of that, they announced that they would be restarting the entry period from the beginning. And anybody who had entered previously was supposed to go and re-enter again, right? Now, that meant that instead of the entry period being, let's say, October 3rd, 4th, something like around about that, the entry period actually started around about October 13th, 14th, 15th, something along those lines, right? There was like a 10-day delay. And that 10-day delay translated into a delay in the May announcement as well. And it was a day-for-day extension of that period. So I do believe that if they now were to start the process, let's say, and it could be as soon as November, but in November or December, or whenever they start it, that's going to have a knock-on effect to the announcement of the results period. You know, they start to give themselves another problem, right? When they announce the results in May, at the beginning of May, you know, is normally when they announce the results, and people immediately start filing their DS-260s. And those DS-260s are then processed between May and the first scheduling of interviews which happens in August, and that continues from that point onward, right? Now, the later they announce the results, the less time they will have to process the DS260s. And that's going to be problematic for them at some point, because there's a lot of work to do, and they'll have lost a month or 2 months or 3 months or whatever it turns out to be. They'll have lost some period of time for that DS260 processing to go through. So this is going to be kind of an interesting thing to see how they manage this. They've delayed because of the $1 fee. I think that's pretty much a certainty. I don't believe they're going to try and implement the passport rule in this particular process. There's been no announcement in the Federal Register that they are doing the passport rule. So the delays are because of the $1 fee. So they're going to get an extra few $1 million, to run the process this year. Maybe they'll have to put that few $1 million towards more processing staff at KCC in order to accelerate the processing. But that wouldn't be my bet, because that's way too intelligent for this mob to think of doing that. I think what they'll do is they'll just be more and more backlogged. So, they could have, backlog problems in the processing in DV 2027. The one other smart thing they could do, by the way, is reduce the number of selectees. If they have a year where they have 130,000 selectees, they get 110,000 or 115,000 people submitting the DS260s. If they only selected 100,000 selectees, let's say, they would have only about 85,000 people submitting the DS260s. They would have less processing work to do. I wonder if it's occurred to them that, I'm sorry, KCC or Visa Office or whoever does this, I'm sorry, but you are a bunch of Muppets, you really are. And so I'm sorry to laugh at you, but this is a clue to you. If you didn't select so many people, then you wouldn't get so many DS260s, and it wouldn't be such a big problem that you delayed the start, right? That's a little bit of a clue. I'm hoping they watch. They used to watch my videos. I don't know if they still do, but I'm hoping they're watching. So anyway, that's a bit of a clue to you in the government on how you can sort of mitigate this mess you're creating. Anyway, let's take some questions from people. Let's get some nice questions. I'm looking for Joe. There you go. I knew Joe would be there. You got your Doritos, mate? So anyway, DV27, yeah, just talked about that. So DV27, it will happen. People are asking, can they just cancel it? No, they can't just cancel it. They have a non-discretionary duty to run the lottery each year. However, that doesn't mean that they have to run it exactly the same way. They could run it and select 60,000 selectees, which would be far too few. They wouldn't give away all the visas. They don't have to give away all the visas, but they do have to run the lottery process each year. That's not up for grabs. Okay. Hello, Simon. Is it true that you can open DS260 and change the embassy without contacting KCC? No. No. I got a message this week from someone who claimed that they had unlocked their DS260 and modified the embassy selection in the DS260. If that's true, and I kind of doubt it, to be honest, for various reasons, but I doubt it. But if that's true, then it would represent a change that's been made in the DS260. I don't think this is true. But the way it works is when you go into your DS260 for the first time, you get one chance, and you only get one chance only, to select the embassy at which you would like to be interviewed, right? And generally speaking, they're going to offer you the one that they think you're at based on the address that they had from your DV entry. But you might have moved, right? So maybe you were living in France before, and now you're living in South Africa, right? And so you would then be able to go into the list and pick Johannesburg in the list. That's the only time you can make that change. That's the only time you could actually select the embassy in that list. That field up to now, for all the sort of 12 years that they've been using the DS260 form, that field has then been locked. And not even KCC can change that value, right? The value that's shown in the DS260. Now, KCC can change the embassies that they send you to. I'm not saying they can't do that. What I'm saying is they can't change the value in that drop-down list, and neither can you, even if your form is unlocked, okay? So now let's just go back to your question. Is it true that you can open the DS260 and change the embassy without contacting KCC? Well, you can't open the DS260 without contacting KCC, right? So that's the first part. So I mean, your question's kind of, a bit strange, but you're a regular viewer, so I'm not going to be mean. But no, you can't open the DS260 unless it's unlocked, right? And you have to email KCC to unlock it. The form is viewable. You can go back into your DS260 and you can view stuff in there, but you can't change data, right? And you can't change the embassy unless they have made that change. And I'm waiting for confirmation from someone, but I would love to see that actually, videoed or something. So you can't change the embassy as simple as that. What you do in order to change the embassy is to change your current address. Okay, so you unlock your DS260 and you change where you're living. Why? Well, because KCC have always wanted you to interview in the country where you live. That's their preference, right? It may not be your preference for various reasons, but that's their preference. And then a few months ago, the government announced a sort of a change in the procedures or the rules a little bit, their processing rules, to say that they will only allow you to interview in your country of residence or your country of nationality. Right, so if you live in France and you want to be interviewed randomly for some reason in Hong Kong, they won't let you do that unless you live in Hong Kong, right? I don't know if there is an embassy there, but you take my point, right? In China, perhaps, let's say, in China, Guangzhou. So you can't just choose anywhere. You have to be interviewed where you are a resident, right? Now, residence sometimes imply that you have to have legal residence there, and you may be challenged to prove that you legally reside in the place where you say you reside. And so reside means lives in, right? So, you live there, and that's why you want to be interviewed there. So you've moved to China, and you want to be interviewed at the US Embassy in China. That's what you're saying. And so you unlock your DS260, you update your address to show that you live in China, and then after you've resubmitted your DS260, you can, a week or two later, you can email KCC and say, hey, I now live in China. Please just confirm you're gonna schedule me in China now, right? And you make it a subtle thing. If you go to KCC and you start emailing them with bombarding them with questions or requests to change your embassy, I can tell you, that's always been a bad idea. It's always been a risky approach, and now it's an extremely bad idea. Okay, because basically they're going to get their heckles up, and they're going to know that what you're trying to do is move your embassy, and so they're going to be more distrustful of you and more cautious in the way they handle you, right? So, so be careful, right? Don't lie to KCC. One last thing I would say is that when this new rule was published that said they would only interview you where you reside or your nationality, I actually spoke about Ankara Embassy at that time, and I said that's extremely unfair for people in locations like Turkey, for example, where Ankara Embassy was extremely poor at scheduling cases, unless that public instruction came with a less public instruction to the embassies to say, you better get your act together now. You better start scheduling all of your cases, because we're not going to allow people to move from Ankara or from Turkey and go move all over the world, with the choice of embassies. We're not going to allow that anymore. So you had better get on and do the amount of work you're supposed to be doing, schedule the number of cases you're supposed to be scheduling, and so on. Now, I hoped that that was going to be the instruction. I hoped that would be the effect. And lo and behold, at least for Ankara, perhaps not for other embassies, but for Ankara at least, that does seem to be happening. Ankara have now scheduled EU cases up to, I think, over 7,600, which is almost to the final 7,750 number that is current at the moment. That is based on data from a forum for Turkish applicants that's extremely reliable in its data collection. And so it's solid information. And that, since it is true, is clear evidence that Ankara, at least, are behaving much, much differently to how they've been behaving for a number of years. And that's extremely good news. I'm very happy about that. I should imagine they are probably getting a bit of help from the fact that not so many Iranians would be applying and fitting in their DS-260s because of the travel ban. That's probably the case. But, well, that remains to be seen. We don't have the data. Okay, let's take some other questions. When will open DV27? Again, I don't know. It's not been announced. I just checked the Federal Register this morning. It's still not announced. We just have to wait for the announcement of the entry date. Okay. I have a case 39500. It's possible to get 2NL in February. Everybody knows what this gentleman doesn't know yet. He's given me a case number here without telling me the region. And as we now know, I have to go and kill an angel in his name because he's given me that bad information. I'm going to assume, and I probably shouldn't help you out, but I'm going to assume it's an Africa region to answer your question. But when you give me a number, you have to give me, please, the year, the region, and the number, okay? Because without that, 39,500 can exist in certainly in Europe. It probably doesn't exist in Asia this year, but the numbers all can exist in each of the regions. So there is a case number Africa number 1. There's an EU number 1. There's an Asia number 1. There's an Oceania number 1. There's a South America number 1. Right? They all start at 1 and they go up from there. Okay, so you have to give me the region. You're asking, is it possible to get the 2NL in February? Maybe, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see how the visa bulletin moves. I think the visa bulletin probably will move for Africa. I think it will. Asia still looks extremely high to me. Africa, is a little bit high, maybe, but I think it will move probably in the next VB. Asia, I don't know that Asia is going to move even in the next VB. It still looks extremely high at 10,000, but we'll have to see. EU, I do expect to move. Oceania, and South America still looking a little bit high, but I would definitely think that EU should be moving, put it like that, and probably Africa. Okay. Any updates on DV27? Just talked about that. Hi, Brett. Mine is to appreciate you for the great work you do every week tirelessly. Thank you. You're very welcome, Penny. That's nice. Cold coming this way. Is it that time of the year I don't like? Yeah, it's not very cold. I think in Fahrenheit now, but I'm in California. I'm cycling every day at the moment. I'm really enjoying cycling. Some of you probably can't quite imagine, and some of you, I don't think I've had many comments, but some of you haven't noticed I've lost a few pounds. But anyway, the cycling in California is tremendous. Life in California is tremendous because the weather never really gets super cold here. We just don't get that cold. I saw a discussion about people who've got some RVs, recreational vehicles. I've got an RV. And the question in the RV community in many parts of the country is, how do you winterize your RV? I'm like, why am I going to winterize my RV? It's never going to freeze. Like, there's no need for me to winterize my RV. But in some parts of the country, they have to drain all the pipes and everything else because they don't want the pipes to freeze, because it gets bloody cold in many parts of America, right? But horrible. So that's why I'm here. So yeah, not cold here. Thanks for your help in serving the nation. Absolutely. Very welcome. When I'm called for interviews, can I make some corrections on the DS-260 forms, please? Thanks. You can. You can make minor corrections to your DS-260. Like, for example, if you have, let's say you've moved, when you go for your interview, they'll probably ask you, is everything on the form still correct, right? And if you had moved since you submitted the DS-260, you might say, yeah, I've got to update my address, or I'd like to update the address that I want my green card and my social security number sent to in America. I'd like to update that address, right? When they ask you if there's anything you need to update on your DS-260, that is your opportunity. You can do that. Now, if you say, oh yeah, I've got some changes to make. I submitted as single, but I'm actually married and I've got 3 kids, right? If you do that in your, if you bowl into your interview and you reveal to them that you've given a bunch of incorrect information on your DS-260, that's not a good idea, right? Now, if you got married and you didn't have time to update your DS-260 before the interview, at least make an effort to try and update the DS-260 and email the embassy and say what's going on. Don't just turn up there and make some major change. And major changes are marital status changes, getting married, getting divorced, those sort of things, marital status changes, right? Or having a baby, right? That's the sort of thing that you really should be letting them know before the interview, if it's happened before the interview, unless it happened the morning of the interview, right? You shouldn't be making sort of major changes like that. But your address, your job, minor changes like that, it's not a big deal. That you can do that in the interview. Okay. Case number is 56 AF56K London Embassy. Any chance? Yeah, probably. It's not really about London Embassy. London Embassy has performed well for many years. Never really had a problem with London Embassy. The only question really is, how good is your number? And your number is probably about halfway through the complete Africa range. We don't know. There is this thing where if, let's say we knew exactly the highest case number and we were able to find exactly the halfway point numerically in that range. Let's say, for example, that Africa goes up to 105,000. So case number 52,500 is exactly the middle point, right, of that whole range. There will be, without a doubt, more cases before 52,500 than after 52,500. The distribution of cases is always skewed to towards the lower numbers, right? There's a technical reason for that. It's to do with countries being limited during the draw. But that's why we see a distribution of case numbers that sort of has a downward curve towards the end. The density of cases is lower in the later ranges than it is in the higher ranges. The density is lower in the later ranges than in the early ranges, right? The early case numbers. So density starts off high, probably let's say 50 or 60%, and we'll end up in Africa down at about 30% by the end. But we don't know exactly what those points will be, what those reductions in densities will be until we actually see the data on January 1st. And so there can be, for example, you could have that 52,500 case number that I mentioned halfway through the number range, let's say, and maybe 60% or 70% of the actual cases are before that number. And that's why the distribution is important to know. That's why right now it is too early to sort of say to someone who's got a case number of whatever number they are, here's your exact chances, right? That's why I wait until January 1st, because I want to see how many cases there are in front of each individual case we're talking about, right? You need to see the distribution of cases in order to make predictions. Now, people have been asking me, by the way, about my predictions. My predictions this year are going to be comedic because, it's like I can do mathematical predictions of where the case numbers should get to, but I have no idea how to predict what Trump is going to do tomorrow morning, right? or a week from now, or a month from now. So I don't know whether he's going to take away the travel bans, ban some more countries. I have no idea, right? I don't know whether the government intend to use up all of the visas or not, because they didn't last year. They just threw away 5,000 visas like they didn't care, right? How do I predict for that? I can't. And so there are factors so big, the travel ban and the government's willingness to try and do all of the work. Those two factors are so big that they blow the math out the water. So when I do mathematical calculations, and I'll go through those in early January, when I do those, I have to couch that by saying, hang on a second, this is mathematical predictions, but what will actually happen, I have no freaking idea, right? Because I just can't predict the things that are going to make a massive difference. Like the travel ban makes a massive difference, to all of the regions, basically. And the government's willingness to get on with the work. I don't know what they're going to do. So although I'll be able to do mathematical predictions, I'll have to tell people in the very next breath, I wouldn't trust those mathematical predictions at all, because we just don't know what's going to happen, right? So this is going to be an interesting year, shall we say. Okay, lots of questions here. Is there any news about the DV27 open date? Let me just keep repeating. There's no news about that. No, they haven't announced it. What do you think about going through in China? Is it good for AF 34,000? If you live in China, it's okay, right? You have to live there. Simone says, hi Simon, nice to catch you live again. Now that we have total selectees, can you estimate if SA 26,000 is a safe 2600 is a safe number, and do you think SA will go current? Okay, let me talk about SA a little bit. I don't get many South American questions, so I don't know why. I speak Spanish. I could help out, but anyway, SA 2600 is probably a good number. It's almost certainly going to go current, and I say that because there's been about a 10% reduction in the number of selectees. I did this the other day, actually. I did the calculations. There's been a reduction in the number of selectees in South America because Cuba had some cases selected, but those cases were then made ineligible, right? And so there's been a reduction of 8.36%. So last year, DV25, they selected 4,651 people. This year, they selected 4,262. So about 400 people less. 8.36%. That's a good drop, and I think that probably is almost entirely to do with those Cuban selectees. And so that's a good thing. And coupled with the travel ban that is going to impact other regions, I think it's quite likely, it's quite possible that South America could go current. There was a 21% reduction, 21.5% reduction in Oceania as well, in the number of selectees. With Oceania, it's kind of like, I put it this way, there's a 5-gallon bucket that I'm going to fill up. And that bucket is called Oceania, right? It's a 5-gallon bucket. I've got two 10-gallon buckets of water here to fill up that 10-gallon bucket. I can pour that water in, right? And I can't get all the water in. I've got 20 gallons of water over here. If I reduce that number of gallons of water to one 10-gallon bucket, it's still too many people, right? Too much water. Sorry, I'm getting my analogies mixed up. So, even though I throw away one of the 10-gallon buckets, I've still got 10-gallon bucket here, and I've got a 5-gallon bucket empty here. That means I'm still going to be left with people, with water left over, people left over. And Oceania is like that. So even though they've reduced from 4,053 selectees last year to 3,178, that is still too many people to fill, to put into my bucket, right? So it's a big drop, 21% drop. But still too many people. EU increased by 3.5%. Asia region increased by just under 1%, and Africa region decreased by 3.5%. Just so you're aware of those numbers. So anyway, back to South America. I think you're going to be okay. I think it's probably one of the most likely regions to go current. If any regions go current, it probably would be South America, and it tends to go pretty quickly. But we'll see. Your number is pretty good anyway. You're only about halfway through the number range. Okay. Thank you for asking my questions last time. Is there a way we can donate to the channel, Simon? This is the best source for information on the subject and deserves an income. I don't really need an income, but I have costs. Yes, thank you for thinking about that, Lucas. On my Brit Simon page, I do have a donation link, and you can donate there. I think there's a way you can do. Occasionally I'm asked questions and I see this little thing comes up with a number. I think I'm supposed to click on that number or something and answer the question. I do it badly, but I'm not really in this to try and make money. But having said that, it would be nice to offset my costs of running the blog and that sort of thing, because I pay for hosting and all of that. And when I sued the government, that cost me a couple of $1,000 as well, a few $1,000. So yeah, it's been an expensive year. Somebody, who is it? Ronnie there's this guy, Ronnie, on one of the Telegram channels. He talks about suing everybody all the time. He thinks suing people is free. It's not free, Ronnie, to sue people. It costs money. You can't just go around suing people. My daughter, when she was like 8 or 9, had that same concept. She says, I'm going to sue that person. I'm going to sue that person. And even then I was saying, honey, it's not just like you sue everybody every 5 minutes. I know America seems like it's a very litigious country, yes, but you just don't go around suing people because they've upset you or something, and it costs a lot of money to sue people. As I just not learned, but as I know. But sometimes you have to sue people because it's the right thing to do, which is what I did in the UK lawsuit. Anyway, Lucas, so go to britsimonsays.com/donate. I think that's, if you wanted to do that, that'd be very sweet of you. But don't do much. Oh, the other thing is I did have a GoFundMe for the lawsuit. The lawsuit was going to cost me a lot of money. And so I asked for a GoFundMe to, I launched a GoFundMe to help offset those costs. I got about $4,000, which was not all of the money, but a very good chunk of the money that was necessary to sue the government. And so it offset my costs quite a bit, which was nice. I very much appreciate people that did that. That GoFundMe is still open, so that's the other way of supporting me on that legal fees thing. So if anyone wanted to support that, any UK winners with numbers less than about 40,000, if you've got 180,000, it's not going to work out so well. But anyway, so as long as you've got a good chance of getting through, and you want to support the lawsuit that made that happen, then yeah, go to GoFundMe, look up Brit Simon, and you'll find my lawsuit GoFundMe. So that would be a nice thing to do. I'd like to offset some of those costs, actually. That would be good. Anyway, hi Simon, your NDMC has not scheduled any case nor 2NL for DV26. Is this something we should be worried about? This is a good question. I'd like to talk about this for Yaoundé, for Casablanca, for a couple of these embassies that are not scheduling or appear not to be scheduling it. Maybe Accra. It is sort of normal that the first 3 months of the year have not very much activity, right? October, November, December tend to be the quietest months, and this happens every single year. I can show you that data going back years and years and years. The number of interviews that we get in October, November, December is not a high number, right? And some of that low number effect comes from embassies that basically seem to take that time off, right? And they don't start interviewing people until January and February, March, and so on. Now, that isn't necessarily a terrible thing. some of these embassies can throw enormous capacity at this process. Casablanca, for example, which is another embassy that appears to be doing this at the moment, that isn't scheduling cases right now. Casablanca has capacity to do several hundred interviews per month if they want to, and they have done in various times, both in recent years in DV24 and DV25. They took in some months hundreds of cases in 1 month, right? So they can move very quickly if they want to. Yaoundé has a pretty good capacity as well. And so the fact that they lose the first 3 months of the year in scheduling, if that's what they end up doing, is not the end of the world. Now, we're not finished with December scheduling yet. We might still see some embassies taking 2NLs for December. There could be 2NLs coming out still until the end of the month. But if there aren't any interviews in your embassy in December, don't panic. It's not necessarily a problem. They can easily start in January, February, March, and so on, and catch right up. Okay, so don't worry too much. Now, if they're still not taking cases in January, February, March, then you have to hit all of the social media platforms, Facebook and Twitter and so on, or X. And start calling the embassy out. You have to, start asking the question of locally, why are they not scheduling the cases, right? So I can't sue them. That was the other thing. That was what Ronnie wanted to do, I think. He wanted me to sue embassies. So I can't sue them. The thing is, number one, it's expensive. Number two, I'm not personally being hurt by that. Right, so somebody who is being affected by that could possibly sue. But the answer of the court would be, and we've been through this, the answer would be, well, the embassy has the right to set its capacity itself. Why are you, suing? You haven't lost anything. Just be patient. And the court won't have much sympathy for that sort of nuisance lawsuit. Okay, so it'll be a waste of time and a waste of money to try and sue on that basis. And by the time you have been hurt, it's too late to sue. So yeah, it's not a great situation. I'm be the first to admit that. But the courts will say, if you sue too early, the courts will say, well, you haven't been hurt yet. You're just being impatient. And on the other hand, if you sue too late, the court will say, well, the deadline has passed. There's nothing you can do. So you're in a catch-22 situation. Okay. Natniel. Hi Simon, I already got my 2NL. When do I have to take my medical? You have to arrange the medical yourself. In the country-specific instructions, which you get to by reading the general instructions, there's a web page for every embassy, and in that web page, which is the country-specific instructions, it tells you how to book your medical, but you're in charge of booking it. They're not going to do that for you. So you have to, when you receive the 2NL, you have to read the instructions and go and book your medical. And the medical normally should be done a week or 2 weeks before the interview, roughly speaking. It depends on the procedures in your particular country. But generally speaking, that's what you do. Okay. Hi, Simon. Nice having you again on another live stream. I trust you're doing good. Thank you, I am. Do you think more 2NLs will go out at the end of the month, last working day? Yeah, it's possible. Lucas, it's possible that we could get some 2NLs. I have seen a time before, I think it was Casablanca, that perhaps Nairobi, it was one of those big ones, where for a few months they were taking, they were out of order. There's an alphabetical order. I think I've probably explained this enough times that most of you know this. If you take the city name of the embassy and you arrange all of those city names of the embassies in an alphabetical order, roughly speaking, that's how the 2NLs tend to come out. So Accra and Addis and Ankara would be at the beginning, and then the B ones, I don't know, Beirut or whoever else would be next. A, B, C, and so on. And so an embassy like Casablanca should be at the beginning, and Nairobi should be roughly in the middle. But previously, they were taking those large embassies for whatever reason, I'm not sure why, but they were taking them out of order and at the end of the month they were sending them at that point. We may return to that. We may see Casablanca taking some 2NLs. Don't know. We'll have to see. But yes, it is possible for 2NLs to come out as late as the end of the month, and even the first few days of the following month. That has happened. But like I was saying earlier, December's not normally a big month. It's Christmas. It's the holidays, right? So think of it from Americans' point of view. From about September, when you're living in America, you'll notice this. It drives you bananas. From about September, you got people going around, instead of saying "Have a nice day" now, which is the American thing, they'll say "Happy holidays." Happy holidays all the time. So, and happy holidays means happy Halloween, happy Thanksgiving, happy Christmas, happy Kwanzaa, or whatever else. So for about 3 or 4 months of the year, everyone's running around saying happy holidays to each other. Drives me bananas, bloody Americans. But that's what they do, right? And then for another 8 months of the year, it's just have a nice day now. They really do that. It's not just in the movies. They do that. I even do it. I'm kind of embarrassed to say. I'm like, have a nice day. Oh dear, so American. Hello, it's Sylvester. Sylvester, how are you? It's Sylvester here. Hope you're doing great. I used your DV photo tool and purchased my photo. Now I'm waiting for the application. Thank you for mentioning. Why am I not? I should be doing a banner, right? dvphototool.com. You're absolutely right. I should have been doing that, right? But yes, so thank you for mentioning the DV photo tool page. Lots of people have used it already. I'm thrilled with the usage of the page. We've had a few people who've contacted the support link. They've had various problems, and our engineers have worked on that, and they've fixed things, they've tweaked things here and there, which has been really good. So we are ready now for the entry period to begin. So Mr. Government Man, open DV27 so that we can get on with things. And, I would recommend probably hold off. Most of you should probably hold off getting your photos yet. Let's wait for the announcement. So, but you'll generally be okay, even if you were to get them now. But I don't want you to have photos that are too old by the time you enter the lottery, right? That's the most important thing. Hey, Simon, is the I-134 affidavit of support, is it important? Yes, it can be. All immigration cases, no matter how they come, whether it's through employment-based or family-based or DV lottery, all of them have a fundamental underlying rule, which is that the person being given the immigrant visa should not become a public charge. A public charge is when you need the government or the public purse to support you in some way financially because you can't support yourself. Immigrants are not supposed to be using those services, right? So they want to make sure that you have a plan or an ability to pay for yourself, which means you should have your own finances or an extremely lucrative job, or you have an I-134, which is given to you by someone who's legally resident in the States, who makes a promise to help you, support you financially if you need that, right? And so, since the rule about public charge is an important rule, the way you solve that is either by showing your own savings or showing your job history or somehow convincing the consular officer that you are not going to become a public charge. But one way is the I-134. And so if they ask for that form, then it becomes an important form to provide. And if you haven't got that, then you have to show savings or some sort of coherent plan that will show that you're not going to get into trouble financially. Okay. What do you think about transfer to China, Guangzhou? Well, only if you live there, right? You guys have to understand that there isn't the free ability to just move embassies anymore. They're going to fight that. They're going to try and dissuade that sort of thing from happening. So yeah, it's a good place to interview if you already live there, right? This is a funny one. Speak French. In the UK, we learn French, right? But I grew up watching, for example, what's that program? the song contest, Eurovision. That's what it is. Eurovision song contest, right? So in Eurovision Song Contest, there are, I don't know how many countries, 40 countries or something. They all put their songs up, and then there's a scoring session where everybody announces their results. And every year in Eurovision, every country has a spokesperson who announces their points being awarded to the other countries. And every year, all the Eurovision countries, all those countries would speak in beautiful English and announce their results. Everyone just spoke in English and gave their results. Every single year when I was a kid, even though I had learned French at school, so I speak French, I'm pretty comfortable with French, I'm pretty fluent in Spanish and German. But even though every other country spoke English, France every single time would speak nothing but French. They are political about it. They're absolutely political about it. So when I see someone like New Boy 7051 says speak French, I'm like, I could, but I'm not gonna. And it's payback for Eurovision. So there you go. That's how I feel about that. Hi, is it okay to do some vaccines at the clinic to reduce costs at the designated doctors? Yes, it is. So people often wonder about that, and I understand the concept. It's cheaper to do the vaccines, before you get to your physician, because the physician might be charging more money for those particular vaccines. Okay, I get that. However, the physician has a list of vaccines which they don't have to do every single one of them, right? They are, when you go for your medical for the DV lottery interview, the physician can use their judgment about which vaccines you need, which you've probably had, which are appropriate medically and which are inappropriate medically. And so if you go ahead and have them done before, you're probably going to get more jabs than if you wait for the physician to do it at the medical. That's the only downside. But if you're fine with that, go ahead and do it and take the records to the physician to show that you've had those vaccinations. Okay. I'm still on wait for DV27 entry period. Hopefully, I'll try my luck again. Yes, good luck. We need more people here. Is it even worth applying for DV under UK? Seems literally a needle in a haystack. That's the same. It's Ben, right? Benji the Playmath. Okay, Benji. That's the same for every country, Ben. It is a needle in a haystack. There were 1,303 selectees. That's probably about 1 in 20 of the number of people that entered DV26. That's not actually a needle in the haystack. That's a pretty good odds of winning. But many of those people have been selected with numbers that will never go current, right? The actual chances of winning for most regions other than Oceania is about 1 in 100, 1% roughly. And so, yes, that is a bit of a needle in the haystack. The lottery is not a plan; it's a lottery, right? It's not like when you're, if you've got the lotto or whatever it is in your country in the UK. I can't remember what the lotto is called, but when you buy the lotto, you don't think, oh, I got to pay my car payment next month, so I'll make a plan to buy a lottery ticket and win all the money, and then I'll be able to pay off my car, right? That's not a good plan. And, of course, that's just like a needle in a haystack, right? This is the same thing. It's a lottery. You've only got a 1 in 100 year chance of winning, right? So everybody that has won already, you're amazingly lucky, and you need to make sure you don't screw it up. And everyone that is going to enter the lottery, you've got to understand it's only a lottery. It's not a plan, right? Okay. I'm a DV26 winner, EU 45K. That's how you're supposed to do it. I found out in October. If August winners got expedited, then would I be eligible to get my case expedited too? You've just emailed me and this morning, and I owe you a response. I'm going to respond to you I'm glad you've actually asked this question, because I can talk to you and let you know. Okay, so you found out in October. You're a UK entrant, and so you're one of these 1,303 selectees, and it's Niam. I'm butchering your name, I think, but anyway, Niam. You're one of the 1,300 UK selectees that have been selected because of the lawsuit. The government reacted in a weird way, and they kind of over-selected. They went wild and selected a bunch of people, right up to about case number 180, 190,000, something like that. Your case number at EU 45,000 is within the normal range of the other European winners, right? And so your case number is not too bad, but it's still on the high end, and it's risky, right? So you should understand that you're not safe to go current. The visa bulletin moves month by month. For the first 3 months, EU has been stuck at 7,750, and it'll probably move from here. But will it get to 46,000, which is what you would need in order to make your number current? I don't know, right? That's going to be hard to sort of be sure about. There's a possibility, but it's kind of an outside chance, right? So let's talk about the expedited thing. In your email to me, you kind of explained this a little bit more and said, look, I only found out in October. Yeah, that's because of the lawsuit. And because of that, will they expedite my case? Well, they don't really need to expedite your case. There's no real advantage to that. What they can't do is they can't say, okay, your case number nearly 46,000. You're going to go first because we messed you around. They can't do that, right? That would be against the law. They can't actually, go faster than your case number allows. In DV25, they selected 43 cases, and you mentioned this in your email. You were aware of that. They selected 43 cases, and yes, they expedited all of them. But all of those cases were by that time current. They were all at 23,000 or below, which was the current number. They were all current. And when they submitted their DS260s, their DS260 submissions and processing were done in about 24, 36 hours. They were amazing. The government really did an amazing job on processing those cases and did expedite those cases. So we know that expediting is possible, but in your case, it wouldn't be legal. And so you wouldn't get any expedited processing. So what will happen is you'll submit your DS260 if you haven't already. It'll be processed over time. And as long as it's processed before your case number gets current, then that's fine. But you have to get current. If your number doesn't get current, then you'll never get an interview. And that's just the way this process works. It's bloody annoying, but that's the way it works. Anyway, I'm hoping you've heard all that, and I hope that answered your questions. I'll ping you back on the email anyway, because I normally tell people, by the way, don't email me because I'm not going to answer emails. But for UK entrants, because of the lawsuit, I did actually ask people to email me, and that's why I'm addressing your email, and I'm happy to answer that. Hey Simon, what time taking to check the DS260, and in my filling DS260 I forget travel history? Is it a problem? It's not a good, when you forget something like travel history, it can give the appearance that you're hiding that travel history. So if I were you, I would unlock the DS260 and add in the travel history. It's the same thing for education history. Education is supposed to be listed from about age 12. The question for education says, give us all of the education that you've completed from secondary education. Secondary education is age 11 or 12 onwards. So you should be detailing your education history from about 12 years on. You should be detailing your work history for the last 10 years, I think they asked for. You should be detailing your address history from age 16 and so on. You should actually go through the questions and answer the questions rather than saying, oh, they don't need that. I don't think I'll give them that. You should give them all the answers that they're asking for, right? So when they ask for the history of, travel history, work history, residence history, social media history, give them the information, right? Don't hide anything. It's a bad idea to hide anything. It can create suspicions. Okay. Please don't get mad about the people asking about DV27. You already addressed it, and anyone paying attention knows they're literally helping the Republicans push that immigrants are dumb stereotype. Oh dear. But it's the Americans that are dumb. And that really is not just a stereotype. It really is true. Look how badly they're running this process, right? It's like, it's obvious who the dumb ones are. It's not the immigrants. Immigrants do very, very well here. And I think that causes a little bit of jealousy in Americans' minds. So, I work with a bunch of people who are much better educated than I am. And I should probably be careful because some of them watch this, but I kind of run circles around them because I come from a British education system that taught me to think, and thinking is apparently in short supply these days. So no, immigrants aren't dumb, but yes, I'm not getting mad about people that are asking about DV27. I understand it's a very, very big question on people's mind. I posted a video. Most of my videos get around about 10, 12,000 views. That's pretty normal for my videos. I posted a video which was about DV27. It's got some like 47,000 views in just a few days. So, there is always going to be a big number of people waiting for, the lottery period to open. It's just like, that's how it is. I understand that. Hi, Simon. I have a question. My country embassy is currently on pause, so we are supposed to be interviewed in another country, but no 2NLs received in my country yet. Yeah, sometimes that happens. You just have to be patient. There's nothing really you can do about it. You just have to be patient. But if you're at a case number range that was already ready for interview, then frankly, you've got not very much to worry about because you've got a very low case number. You should be fine. Okay. Is it a must to upload derivative passport when applying for DV27? We don't know yet, right? There's a possibility they might include the passport rule. If they do, it probably wouldn't include the derivatives. Probably not, because it didn't before. But that's if they include the passport rule, which I tend to doubt. But none of this we know for sure because we haven't had the instructions released for DV27. There's no announcement of the dates. There's no announcement of the instructions. There's no announcement of which countries are eligible or ineligible. There's no announcement or confirmation of whether just the $1 fee thing is going to be implemented or the passport rule as well. We don't know. We don't know any of that because it's not been announced. Okay. Hope that is clear. Simon, our goat. I remember just not so long ago in the last year or so, people were calling me the goat, and I'm like, what's a goat? And I'm like, why are you calling me a goat? I didn't know what a goat was. I'm a boomer. I'm one of the last boomers. So, I was born in 1964. So I'm one of the final boomers. Hi, Simon. As a student in South Africa who wants to go to university next year, does it make sense to me apply for the DV lottery? Absolutely. Why not? If you want to live in America, then you can apply for the DV lottery. A lot of people actually sort of apply for the lottery and then they win and they're like, do I want to go? Do I not want to go? Maybe they don't follow through the process, but you can apply for the lottery. It'll cost you $1 probably and a few dollars to create the photo. So why not? There's universities in America too, although personally I would probably educate outside of America, but never mind. I can't believe I used to watch you now and finally in the States. Thanks for the update. Nairobi, Kenya, DV25. Where are you, Victor? Whereabouts are you in the States? I'd like to hear. I always like to hear where people chose to live. And I'm a bit mean to some people I know when they choose to live in Alabama or Louisiana or somewhere awful like that. But hopefully you haven't done that. INT's second US consulate is opening in my province. Will that make DV visa processing easier or faster? No. There are some countries where there's more than one consulate in the country, but DV processing or immigrant visa processing is normally only going to happen at one of those consulates, not at all of them. It's kind of special. They need special education for the consular officers to be able to do immigrant visas. It's a much bigger deal giving someone a visa for life than for a trip, right? And so they want the best consular officers, and they've got special education. I don't mean that they have special education in the way that sometimes is used. I mean they're special, right? Hello, sir. My name is Mohammed. I was 7 times do it DV lottery, but I can't find it. So what can I do? Mohammed, you just have to keep trying. Your chance of selection is about once in 100 years. So there are some people that will try to enter the lottery 20, 25 times and never be selected. I've known people that have tried that many times and they've never been selected. It's not necessarily that you're doing something wrong, but do make sure your photo, let me just put this up, do make sure your photo is good. Your photo can get you disqualified from the DV entry. So if you care about your chances, the best way to make sure you've got a compliant photo is to go to dvphototool.com. Yes, it costs a few dollars. It's $6 for your first photo, but for 2 photos or more, it's $5 each, right? So $10 for 2 photos, $15 for 3 photos. So, you can go to DV Photo Tool. It's a very, very simple, easy, quick process, and the photo is verified using AI to make sure it's going to meet the requirements of the lottery, and that will help you from not being disqualified. And I've got evidence that shows that a large number of cases, probably well over 40% of people that enter the lottery get rejected from the lottery before even being selected. Even though numerically they've got a low case number, they're then rejected because of their photo. So don't be in that situation, okay? What do you think about changing embassy from Casablanca to Guangzhou? Yeah, as a future student. Well, future student sounds like bullshit to me, to be honest. So if you've moved to China because you're a student, then yeah, fine. But if you're saying, oh yeah, I've applied for a visa and I'm going to go there, you're creating a lie. And you're doing that because you think Casablanca won't take any interviews. Number one, it's bad to lie. Number two, Casablanca probably are going to take interviews. So just relax, chill out, and stay there. Would be my my advice. To be honest, at the moment, it's way too early to be panicking about Casablanca not taking interviews. Way too early. You need to stop that, guys. With regards to the $1 fees for DV27, how? So you please have any idea of prospects that can pay the fees? Is it possible I can do through a friend's Visa card in case I do not possess any in my name? Yeah, absolutely. They're gonna take the payment from pretty much any sort of Visa card, debit card, credit card, whatever. I'm sure that probably what they're working on now is finding the best possible payment system. For the DV Photo Tool, that was one of the things that we struggled with, because it's very difficult to get a payment processing option that works in every single country around the world. I actually cycle with a guy who works for Google on the payment side, and Google has a very good payment system. We actually opted to use a company called Stripe, and between the two there wasn't much, but Stripe has just slightly better coverage than Google at the moment, and so we went with Stripe to collect the payments. But yeah, I mean, I was talking to him, and it's difficult. It's very difficult to get payments from every single country, particularly those countries in Africa that use essentially mobile phone credits to get payments. Those are going to be more difficult to get payments for. So actually, I'd be interested if anyone has used the dvphototool.com app and they've struggled with getting payments through in various countries, please let me know. I'd like to hear about that, to see if there's something we can do to help out those countries. Okay. The later they open the lottery, the more likely the administration is to achieve their goal of not issuing all the visas for that fiscal year. That's not really their goal. It's kind of like, it's not their goal. That's the wrong way to put it. I think you're probably coming from the point of view of Trump's a moron, and he is. Yes, Trump's a moron. The administration right now are not good. They're not good people. They're not keen on immigration and so on. They don't even understand the positive aspects of immigration. It's a great shame, right? Most of us with some brain cells agree on those basic points, right? Trump is not a good person. You've got to be a fucking moron, honestly, to think he's a good person. He's not a good person. If you don't know anything else about the man, you have to understand what a not good person he is, right? And so there's an animus towards all sorts of people from him and from his administration. And immigrants, yes, are affected. But the people that are running the DV lottery are not necessarily Trumpers. They're just people trying to do their job and go through the process. So their goal isn't really to stop the immigration. If Trump wanted to try and stop the immigration, he could probably do some things to make it more difficult. But he can't really just stop it. He has to actually change a law, right? And he can't do that just like that. He's not a king, right? So he has to go through a process. So there you go. Have they started playing the DV lottery? No, the entry period is not open yet. Any idea why there's like a 7-month gap between the DV lottery registration in October, November, and the results coming out in May? Yeah, so they do things, right? There's been lawsuits where we've sued, for various things, and they've had to reveal all sorts of cables and emails and all sorts of information. And from those, we get quite a lot of information. And so I've read emails where in January and February and March, there's been emails back and forth between departments where they're processing the entries that happened in November. In fact, in October and November. In fact, I've even seen emails that have been, while the entry period has been going, they're already going through and starting to verify photos and that sort of thing, while the entry period is still open. So they're already rejecting cases that have bad photos right from the very beginning. So that 7-month period is about going through those winners. The draw process happens fairly quickly, but the process of actually going through all the photos and all of that stuff, that goes on over that 7-month period. And then they have to produce the letters, and they have to set the announcement site up and get the database ready and so on. So there's a lot of stuff for them to do. That's why there is a gap between those two time periods. Okay. Oh, this is the sort of thing. Oh, it's Joe. Asked in the forum, but we'll repeat here. Could you please describe in greater details the importance of social media posts? Yeah, certainly. And this is the sort of thing earlier. This is Swiss francs, I guess $5. So thanks for that donation, Joe. Social media. I think you're sort of talking about when I spoke earlier about get on social media and start talking about certain embassies. When embassies start to misbehave, there are social media there are social media campaigns that go on, and I think some of those social media campaigns actually do get to the embassies. There's been a couple of cases where I've seen some reaction from the embassies based on social media campaigns, based on stuff that we say. I know for a fact that there was one year when I think it was Fiji mentioned to someone that they were aware of my videos and they were helping out. At that time, we actually tried to sue Sydney Embassy. And so I was making YouTube videos about suing Sydney Embassy. And all of a sudden, Fiji Embassy sort of stepped up and helped out and solved the problem that was happening in Sydney. Sydney were moving their location from one location to another. and just didn't bother thinking it was necessary to schedule any interviews for like a 6 or 8 month period or something. It was just ridiculous. They just screwed everyone over. And so we began to sue them, etc. And as we were starting that process, as we were getting into that process and suing them, with Jesse Bless, that was with Jesse Bless at that time, one of the great DV lottery lawyers that's out there that's worked extensively on DV lottery cases, as well as Curtis Morrison and Charles Cook and others. But as we were starting to sue them, all of a sudden Fiji embassy stepped up and said, "Hey, we'll take all the Sydney cases over here. Come over here." And it was a relatively easy thing for the Australian cases to get their asses over to Fiji to get interviewed, and Fiji really saved the day. And I believe that was because of social media / my YouTube videos, and I believe that because they mentioned it to a couple of the applicants. The embassy said, "Yeah, we're aware of Brett Simon's videos and the lawsuit and all this sort of thing." So, so that has happened. Social media campaigns can be effective. Sometimes I think it gets a bit sort of out of control and a bit silly. But at the end of the day, if I'm in a situation where I've just won the DV lottery and my embassy is screwing me over, I'm going to shout about it from the rooftops. I'm going to go on social media campaigns. I'm going to stand outside their front door. I'm going to make sure everybody in that embassy knows what they're doing, right? And we've seen those sort of little campaigns as well. Now, totally peacefully, of course. But yeah, you have to do something. You can't just sit there and be rolled over, right? So there you go. So anyway, thanks for that donation. Thanks for that question, Joe. And if I haven't answered your question correctly, we'll deal with it on Telegram, right? Or BritSimonsSays.com. Can I use the same photos for 2 applications? My photo as the main applicant, wife and kid as dependent. Same photos as wife, main applicant, me and kids as dependent. Absolutely, yes, you can do that. That is not a problem for the DV lottery process. That doesn't come up as a duplicate entry, fraud concern, or anything like that. Yeah, you can use the same photos, right? Oh, I've answered this. I already answered this thing about moving from Casablanca to Guangzhou. So there you go. Which one web actually writes to do what? I don't know what that means. Don't know what that means. Danielle says, I'm in the UK, served in the British Army for 10 years now. Thank you for your service. Graduated with mechanical engineering degree. Similar route I went. Is the UK in this year's lottery? I am married. Does my wife have to apply also? Nobody has to apply, Daniel. But if you enter the lottery and you're married, you have to include your spouse on your lottery entry, right? Your spouse can also then enter and include you, but you have to include your spouse. If you're legally married, unless you're divorced or legally separated, and legally separated is a court process, as you're probably aware. But unless you're legally separated or divorced, and you were married or you are married, even if you're sort of separated, even if you're going through bad times or whatever, then you have to include your spouse in the entry. Otherwise, you'll be disqualified, right? If they know you're married and you didn't include your spouse, you will be disqualified later. And then the other question is the UK in this year's lottery? They will be. I believe they will be. So actually, Zarthisius did the math. I think there's been about 9,000 people from the UK entering the USA in the last few years, over the last few years, and that caused the number of entries to dip below that 50,000 number. So basically, a country becomes ineligible when the total number over a rolling 5-year period of immigrants in 3 categories, only 3 specific categories, but if the total number of people added together is 50,000 or more, then that country becomes ineligible for the lottery. The UK was traditionally over 50,000 for that rolling 5-year window, but not by much. And then the COVID years took those numbers down, and maybe other things took those numbers down as well. And so the numbers dipped down, and it would take about the DV24 numbers are the numbers we're waiting for to see whether they're out or whether they, the UK is included or not. But it would need an increase to about 13,000 people that entered during fiscal year 24 from the UK in those three categories in order to make the UK ineligible in DV27. I don't think that will happen, and so I think the UK will remain eligible for another year, maybe 2 years, maybe forever if they're no longer getting many people. Right? We'll see. But yes, I think it'll be in there. But yeah, you're all good. Watch out for the announcement of the entry period. I've joked around with my friends online about Trump and his policies with stuff like that have an impact on my DV lottery application because Rubio said something about it. Yeah, I mean, look, I speak a lot of shit about Trump because I dislike the man and I dislike his policies and I dislike the people who enable him in many, many ways. But I'm an American citizen. I can say what the flip I like, right? If I were an immigrant wanting to come to this country, or if I were applying for any sort of visa, I would probably tone down that rhetoric about Trump. I probably wouldn't say so many things. I probably wouldn't like so many posts with Orange Man stuff, TDS stuff, all of that, right? Yeah, you've probably got to be a little bit careful. We should have freedom of speech in this country. We're supposed to have freedom of speech in this country, but Trump and the current administration seem to have lost the plot, and are searching people's social media history and that sort of thing for anti-Trump sentiment. So be a little bit careful. Don't be as bad as me. Okay. Oh, sorry, you're the Joe. You got your Doritos. Sorry, it was a different joke. You got your Doritos in hand. That's fun. I thought, yeah, I did get mixed up with the Joes there. Two Joes. Who knew? Is there any advantage to applying early in the registration window versus later? Good question. No advantage whatsoever. The many rumors that if you apply on Tuesday, or if you apply in the evening, or if you apply at the beginning of the entry period or the end of the entry period, that you'll have more chance. And I've dispelled that myth many times. There is when we get the selectee data, there is an entry date shown on every entry, and you can find out that there are people from every day, right? Now there are more people from the beginning and more people from the end that get selected. That is true, but there are more entries at the beginning and at the end. And again, I've proven that by watching server activity on the government servers. They publish the data sometimes, or all the time. And during the entry period, there are more people that go in at the beginning of the entry period, and then there's a sort of a spike at the beginning of the entry period. Then it goes down, and you'll see throughout the whole month of entry, it's sort of like that, and then it spikes up towards the end again. That exact same pattern comes through when we see the selectees. In other words, there are more people that get selected from the early days of the entry period and the last days of the entry period, and there are less people that get selected from the middle. But they all correlate exactly with the server activity, meaning the chance of selection is the same on any given day. There is no difference on the day, as long as they don't make any technical mistakes. If there were a technical mistake where the system sort of like went wacky for a day, that could be a problem. But other than that, you can always see that sort of pattern in the data. And we'll have that data for DV26. I do it every year just for fun. I check that every year just for fun, and I've never found any date that has any special significance or advantage beyond the server activity. More people applying will mean more winners on a particular day. That's all it is. Okay. U.S. Embassy in Russia is closed, so by default, they're scheduled Russians in Warsaw. Yes. Russians is hard to get in Warsaw and much easier in Kazakhstan. Good point. but I don't know if it's an okay reason to change the embassy. Really good point. I don't know. You'll have to email KCC and maybe ask them. Maybe they would accept that as an excuse to interview you in Kazakhstan. The fact that you can't get perhaps a Schengen visa, it's harder to get to Warsaw for whatever reason. They should have already be aware of that, but yeah, it's a good question. I don't know how that's going to work with the more recent rules that they've implemented. Okay, let me just take a couple more questions. I live in Russia, but I'm not Russian citizen. And when in the filing zone exists in the question, where do you live now? Should I write Russia or the country where I'm born? English is sending my dyslexia up the wazoo here. If they say, where do you live now? And you live in Russia now, the answer is Russia. Really, these are not trick questions. They're very simple questions. Every question that they ask, just answer the question. Don't try and think about, what do they want to know that for? Or what's the best way to answer that question? Just answer the question. Just take every single question very, very simply and answer that question. Don't try and be overly clever, overthink it. Don't try and do that. Just answer the question. If someone says, where do you live now? And you live in Russia, then the answer is Russia. Okay. Is Yemen really in the travel ban? Can't Yemen citizens apply? So Yemen really is in the travel ban, yes. Yemeni citizens can apply for the lottery. They can submit the DS-260. They can get scheduled for an interview, but they will not be issued a visa at that interview. So if they choose to go through that whole process and spend the money, etc., they're in for disappointment at the end. And that's the same for any country that is travel banned. The only way that they can get past that is if they are exempt in some way from the travel ban. And typically the only realistic way is to have a second nationality and a second passport of an unbanned country and get through that way. That's the only way. Okay. Is it hard to change embassy when I became current? Yes. When you become current, you move into AV stage, right? Which is a stage, we call it stage 4 sometimes. If you emailed KCC at that point, they send you an email response saying you are current for interview processing. That means your DS-260 is processed and your number is current, and now you've been assigned into a queue of people at that embassy, the embassy where they thought you were supposed to be scheduled, right? Once you're in that queue, which is AV status or stage 4, KCC will no longer allow any changes to your DS-260. And so you're basically stuck at that point. So you must not wait until that point, okay? How do you find the weather in California versus the UK? No contest whatsoever. My wife is from Spain. We lived in the UK for about 10 years, and she hated the weather there. In the winter, it's just constantly grey skies and that sort of thing. The winter here, it's a little chilly. I sometimes have to put on a jacket or a hoodie or something, but that's as far as it gets. And the sky is blue all year round, right? It really makes you happier when you're looking at blue skies rather than, dirty grey skies all year round, right? So yeah, the weather is just awesome here. And if you weigh up, I mean, we had a great life in the UK apart from the weather. We were able to travel to Europe. We were able to go see family in the UK or in Europe, in Spain, and so on. We were comfortably off financially. We had a great life in the UK. And so, and by the way, our kid would have gone through a UK education system, which is better than the American education system. But the weather was shitty and it was depressing, and like, who wants to live like that, really? I also had previously been in America. I knew I could make a lot more money in America. And so, those were our reasons for moving. I knew there was more opportunity for me professionally in America, But more importantly, really more importantly, the weather in America was better than the UK. And I couldn't fix the weather problem by living in Spain because the economy in Spain was not good enough for me to work there and make a living there without traveling every single week. So I was, even in the UK, I was often traveling within either Europe or to America on a weekly basis. I spent one 5-year period where I traveled to America from the UK every 10 days, like every 2 weeks. I would work in the USA for 2 weeks, and then I would work from home for 2 weeks. I was basically a programmer, so I would have meetings and things in the USA for 2 weeks, and then I would go home and I would be programming for the next 2 weeks, and then I'd come back. For 5 years, I did that. I was very aware of California weather, very aware of Florida weather. I had job opportunities, and I could have based myself in Florida or in California. But California weather is just awesome. Florida weather is nice, but it can get a lot hotter, like sticky weather, sticky hot. Didn't want that all year round. Okay, let's see. Just see if there's any interesting questions. DV26, case number 38.8K, Europe, Russia, any chance for interview? A risky range, I would say, right? It's too early for us to sort of make good predictions about where the numbers are going to go next year. And there's going to be way too much big factors that will affect this for us to make really reliable predictions. So you'll have to wait and see. There's no doubt about that. But it's not a safe range, put it like that, right? 38.8, 38.8K in Europe in DV26. It's not going to be a safe range, put it like that. The number cut off at 23,000 last year. That was horribly low. It shouldn't have gone that low. It should have been about 30,000, 31,000, something about that. But still, 38K is going to be, in a risky range. Okay. It's an interesting sounding question. Let's see. Also, I was wondering if it would be possible to calculate the pool size of flawless applications and thus accurately adjust odds for people applying without errors. Caribou, I've obviously missed the first part. Oh, here we go. I have recently taken a passport photo for an Irish passport, but I'm contemplating taking another for US green card specifications at a Max Spielman booth. Is it advisable to be safe? I don't know. Why don't you go to where are you? Where's this Max Spielman thing? Oh, damn. Rather than doing that, here we go. Hide. Yeah. Go to dvphototool.com, right? And go, and get a fully compliant DV lottery photo there. It's much easier. I don't know why you would go to a photo booth when DV Photo Tool exists. So I don't know. So I don't know what this Max Spielman booth thing is, but yeah, don't do that. But your other question was kind of interesting about the pool, and I've lost it now. So I wasn't quite sure. But if you've got an interesting question about the pool that you want to explain, maybe go to BritSimonSays.com and ask me that question there. Okay. Let me just take this question as the last question. I like taking this particular question. I've had it several times, but I just want to dispel this myth. The DV lottery delay has got nothing to do with either Trump nor the shutdown, right? Neither one of those things. Okay. How do I know that? Well, Trump, I know it was not to do with him because he's busy doing other things. And none of them to do with DV lottery. He's just not that interested in DV lottery. And I know it's not the shutdown because the shutdown happened after the delay of DV 27
had already happened. DV27 should have been announced in late September, mid to late September. That's normally when they do the announcement. They didn't do that announcement, and therefore we didn't have the open period, sort of planned for very early October. But the shutdown didn't happen until October the 1st, right? So the shutdown wasn't in place when the delay had already happened for DV27. It's not about the shutdown. It's not about Trump. It's about the $1 fee. That's what it's about. So that's all it is. Okay. I'm going to take one more question because this one looks interesting. I'm Greek from the UK and have an Iranian girlfriend. My word, there's a whole bunch of stuff. A Greek, Iranian, and the UK. There's probably a joke in there somewhere, but if I win the DV26 lottery and get married before the interview, can I add her in my application, or do I first move to the US, return to marry her, and apply for spouse visa? Oh, man. Okay, so if you enter the lottery and you win, right, and you would be talking about DV 2027, let's just clarify a couple of things. You're Greek and you're from the UK, right? If you were born in the UK, then you're actually from the UK, right? You're a UK entrant. But if you were born in Greece, then you could enter as Greek, right? Your girlfriend will only be able to be included in your application if you get married first, right? So you would normally apply as a single person for the DV lottery entry because you're single. You don't have to get married in order to apply. But if you were then selected, the smart thing to do would be to rush out and get married straight away, and then go through the process as a married couple, right? And you should do that as quickly as you possibly could. Don't delay that. Like once you find out you're a winner, you want to get married sort of straight away. Now, if you get any questions, why did you get married after you were selected in the lottery? You would simply show evidence that you were already in this relationship, and you obviously don't want to go to America without your girlfriend. So that's perfectly fine, and the consular officers won't have a problem with that. What they tend to do, though, is if you did get married after your win was announced, they will expect some sort of evidence about the relationship, okay? And it could be, emails that you had swapped, before, or you went on a trip together and photos of you in Bora Bora or wherever the hell you went on holiday together, some evidence that the relationship existed. You were boy and girlfriend, you were in a relationship prior to the lottery win, that you haven't just won the lottery and then you thought, I know, I'll go and add someone to my case by marrying them and get an extra green card. That second thing would be fraudulent. That's dangerous. You can get disqualified for life for that. Okay, so don't do that. But if you're in a relationship, yeah, absolutely, you get married. And don't move to America first, then come and sponsor for a spouse visa. That's just asking for trouble and pain. The spouse visa will take years. So you wouldn't do that. You would go through the DV lottery process as a married couple. Okay, everybody, that's it now. We'll call that the end of the day. I'm glad that DV photo tool banner came up there, just at the bottom there. Where is it? Just here. Go there to get your DV lottery photos taken care of. But any questions you have, you're very welcome to ask. Best place to ask the questions is at brittsimonsays.com, and I answer all the questions there. If you enjoyed today's video, please give me a thumbs up on the video, please, and make sure you're subscribed if you're not already subscribed, to make sure you get good information and you hear about the DV27 lottery period. Okay, everybody. Thanks, and bye-bye.